Taiwan is famous for its vibrant night markets and an abundance of affordable delicacies. But as 2025 begins, the nation is facing a troubling trend. Diarrhea cases have surged to a 5-year high for this time of the year, according to the Taiwan Centers for Disease Control. And among the reported cluster cases, nearly 96% were linked to norovirus. That's a leading cause of foodborne illness. I'm Divya Gopalan. You're watching Connected. So, just how safe is the food we consume? Let's take a look at some of the key figures. This data shows that food poisoning outbreaks in Taiwan have been rising since 2007, jumping from 248 reported cases to 633 in 2023. Now, over the same period, the number of food poisoning cases has surged from 3,200 to just over 5,000, highlighting a growing trend in foodborne illnesses across the country. Now, to help us understand what we're dealing with when it comes to food safety, we're joined by Martin Bucknavage from the United States. He's the team lead for the food safety and quality at Penn State Extension at the university. And from Taiwan, we have Dr. Reuben Wang, Associate Professor at the Institute of Food Safety and Health at National Taiwan University. Let's start with you, Reuben. Can you tell us what your focus is when it comes to food safety?
Well, I think when we're dealing with food safety, we have to know which kind of hazard is there. There are chemicals one and biological one. So when dealing with these two, we have to have very different strategies.
Okay, and we'll get into those a little bit further in the program. But before that, Martin, tell us how food safety features in your work with the various food producers and I guess the supply chains at your capacity at Penn State Extension.
Yeah, we do a lot of training. We do a lot of work with food manufacturers, with people who prepare food at retail and food service operations, focusing in on a lot of the issues that occur, things that you guys are facing there. We try to look at those types of issues and figure out strategies to help reduce that.
Right, and speaking of the things that we're facing here, if I can go back to you, Reuben, at the beginning of the program, we highlighted some numbers. Can you tell us how representative that is really of the issues we're facing with food safety, or does it go much further than that?
Okay, so when we're seeing these numbers, the rise in the may seem alarming, but it also reflects the improvement of surveillance and diagnosis and public awareness. For example, more cases are being detected and reported. However, when we break down these numbers and seeing it by category, there's a concerning trend. You know that catering business are responsible for more outbreaks today, comparing the numbers from 2010 to 2023, the cases nearly doubled, as you already shown in your previous video. So this could be linked to changes in my business models and lifestyle. People are now eat more outdoor. They rely on food delivery and prioritizing convenience. So with that being said, keep food safe during the transport, like maintaining cold chain and ensuring proper storage, and reheating before eating becomes very, very critical. Another key issue I would like to bring up is the labor. You know that in food service industries, we see a very high employee turnover rate, which means food safety training may be inconsistent. So without these proper knowledge and the ongoing education, mistakes in handling of food can easily lead to contamination. So we all agree that we need stronger regulations, better food safety educations, and like solutions to tackle these challenges.
Now, Reuben brought up so many points there, Martin, but can you tell us about the key patterns you're seeing in the U.S.? Reuben spoke about the increase in catering and people ordering food and people eating out. Is that similar in the U.S.?
Yeah, absolutely, very similar. And I think one of the things he pointed out, which is important, is that we look at the data and we have to realize that there is better surveillance now than there had been. And so that better surveillance is providing more numbers. And so we have to make sure that we're looking at that increased surveillance versus are things actually getting worse. And I think, we can, that's one thing. But certainly when we look at the fact that there are, people are eating out more, there's, a lot more different types of options for people to get food. Certainly there's challenges from that perspective.
Right. And before we go into those challenges, I want to take a look at a historic look at some of the key cases that have been in Taiwan. Now, the issue of food safety has been in the spotlight in 2024 here for all the wrong reasons. But for years, Taiwan has been struggling with major violations from both improperly prepared food to deliberate tampering with ingredients and expiration dates. Fred Xie takes a look back at some of the most high-profile cases over the past 15 years.
How safe is the food we eat? The March 2024 Palam Kapitiam food poisoning case, which left 6 dead and 29 ill, is just the latest string of food scandals in Taiwan.
涉嫌贩卖过期鸡蛋，抽验25件，有5件标来逃该里几个
Over the past decade, Taiwan has faced a string of food scandals, raising concerns about long-term health risks, mislabeling, and fraud.
不肖厂商疑似把已经发霉变质，
In 2012, a company was caught mixing expired animal feed-grade milk powder with regular milk powder and selling it to its consumers. A year later, Top Pot Bakery, known for its all-natural bread, was exposed for using artificial flavorings, technically legal but highly misleading. That same year, cottonseed oil unfit for human consumption was fraudulently sold as cooking oil. Food mislabeling remains a major issue. Companies have altered expiration dates, mislabeled fish products, and even recycled expired eggs. In 2018, a popular bubble tea chain falsely marketed its caramel syrup as handcrafted when it was made from artificial additives. The following year, a coffee chain misrepresented its beans as 100% Arabica, despite blending them with cheaper Robusta beans. The Taiwan Food and Drug Administration reports that in the first 3 months of 2024, food poisoning outbreaks surpassed 70% of the total cases reported in 2023. But with the numerous unreported cases, does the reality paint an even more alarming picture?
Now, Reuben, these cases made the headlines, but our reporter there brought up some key points about although some of the mislabeling, some of the other tamperings does not lead to immediate food issues or food safety scares, how much would you say, or how much of an issue is that? And how much would you say that goes unreported and undetected?
I think the chemical ones is rather easy to understand because it doesn't have instant harms, but biological ones is very different. It's another story. For example, the case that we have seen in the Baoling case is a biological hazard. And you know that when dealing with this hazard, as you know, this bacteria called Bucknavage gladioli, they produce some kind of very toxins like pancreatic acid. And when dealing with these toxins, they actually produce or synthesize under a very specific conditions. They need certain temperature. They also specific humidities, nutrients, and also people know that when these toxins are produced, they also need some kind of symbiotic microbes to help them to produce. So what I mean here is that these toxins, the levels are very hard to predict compared to the chemical ones because the chemical doesn't shift. But the toxins produced by microbes, they varied from products to products. So we have to know that when different strategies have to be made.
Martin, you said you work with from the agricultural stage right through the supply chain to finally the end product. Can you explain to us what kind of attention is being paid into what Reuben was talking about, especially when it comes to these toxins that are hard to detect?
Sure. I think one of the things that, as that story was playing, we could see is the fact that there are some loose policies and practices that are in place. And I think when you have that type of atmosphere, that type of environment, it does create the opportunity for things to go wrong if you're not tightly controlling it throughout that supply chain. And with norovirus, that virus generally has to come from somebody who has the illness being passed to the food or to other people around them. And again, if you don't have tight controls on that, right, tight controls on people being, when people are ill and they're in and around that food, they're going to spread that virus pretty easily.
And I guess that goes to one of the points that Reuben made about, having especially the employment base or the people working with that food and a huge turnover in that, and that's hard to control. But Reuben, Taiwan in general has quite strict policies and quite tight regulations, but there seems to be more and more of these cases, and you did talk about better surveillance, but is there a systemic issue at play here?
I think the systemic issues maybe go back to the education, but our government in Taiwan actually released several food safety regulation rules, like the 5 rings food safety system. And this system ensures that we have to make food very safe at every stage from farm to fork. And the most important thing is education, because negligence is the most severe thing that we encounter in Taiwan. People don't have those trainings to make food safer.
Right. How tech can be incorporated, I think, is a very important part of this conversation, and we will be exploring that. But before we go to that, Martin, I want to look at some hard numbers here. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, it estimates that annually 48 million people in the U.S. get sick from food, while 3,000 die from foodborne illnesses. Can you give us a sense of what we're looking at here and why? I mean, to us, those numbers seem huge, but is that all
I think
relative?
Certainly those are estimations, and to the degree of accuracy of those. But we track cases that occur, whether it's recalled food or we have track different types of outbreaks. I think rather we look at more on the cases that are actually real, and kind of focus in on those cases that do pop up and look at the reasons for those. And I think a lot of what we're looking at here, and as Reuben was talking about, we talk about education, but certainly another component of that, you can have regulations, but you have to have compliance. Getting compliance throughout that food supply chain, and especially when it comes to workers who are going in there. I know you have a very robust, street food that you can go out there and get a lot of things. And I would imagine it's pretty difficult to get and make sure that everybody is in compliance, all along those, with as many different purveyors of product that are out there.
So what concerns do you have about food safety in your part of the world? And if you're watching on YouTube, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And you can also click the thumbnail to watch more on how governments are tackling food safety and what role AI can play.